Hey there, friends. Welcome to another book review by John Henry Sheridan. Yes, I recently shaved my hair off again. Feels good. I'm recording this towards the beginning of spring 2024. So, the book in question today is Room Full of Mirrors by Charles R. Cross, a biography of Jimi Hendrix. Man, so often when I read biographies or autobiographies, I feel like the first few chapters might be a little tough because you're getting used to a character that you don't really know. The character you're familiar with, if the person is popular, is someone as an adult generally, right? So the early years you may not be so interested in as a reader. I may not be. But his childhood was very crucial in learning about who he became. So that was great. Charles Cross goes deep. This guy dives deep, the author, into writing biographies. I think he did, I don't know, over 300 interviews or something, hundreds of interviews with people in Jimi's life and people who, maybe Jimi experts or whatever, but mainly people in Jimi's life. And he really did his best to assimilate all this information, plus, of course, his own research of reading other books and watching things and listening. And, of course, Jimi's interviews and stuff like that directly. Anyway, this is the second Charles Cross biography I've read, the first one being the Kurt Cobain one. And this guy, he really delivers an experience that you feel is as whole and integral, like it's connected, as whole and complete a picture as you could possibly hope for from an outside point of view, right? From someone who's not the person. So kudos to him, Charles Cross. Tip my hat to you. Amazing. So, okay, now Jimi Hendrix life. There's a couple words that come to mind: loner, freedom, dreamer, in some ways lost soul. Another word is chaos. Very chaotic life. But another way to look at it is also kind of living in the moment. I won't say to a fault. That's a judgment, but you could see it that way, right? Because he would just jump at the drugs and the drinking and the opportunities, and while that was an incredible facet to his character, which led him to live the life he led, of course that could be harmful when you just jump into things without really thinking about any long-term effects. He seemed to have no consideration for long-term effects of anything, which is part of why we love him, because when he was on stage, when he was performing, when he was writing, he was really just like deep in that creative moment. Now, all that said, he really did get sick of touring. He got sick of performing, of doing tricks. He felt like a circus show at some point. This guy's career was super short. 1966, the end of 66, he basically began to kind of get a small foothold in the London music scene. The end of 66. And then he ends up passing away in September of 1970. So this legendary character that we know and love as Jimi Hendrix was all within basically a 4-year span, even less. Now, of course, he had many years of building up to that, where he was cutting his teeth, earning his abilities, gaining so much experience, mainly as a backing musician for so many different acts. He played a little bit with Ike and Tina Turner. He played a little bit with Otis Redding. He played with Curtis Knight. He played with Little Richard. He played with, like, almost you name it, any of the acts that were open to black performers. He may have jumped into their routine for a little while, some for longer than others. So this book touches on racism. He had part Native American in him as well, which is awesome. It's awesome in that it colors it's a deeper dimension than just black or white thing. You know what I mean? And of course, he knew he was black, and that was affected. I'm using the old school term black. I know African American, whatever. At that time, that word was certainly common. So I'm reading his era, and he knew his skin color would affect the way people received him when he traveled in the South of the U.S. In England, it wasn't so much a problem. So that's part of the reason why he felt that London was like his new home once he started living there. So I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but I was just shocked at how hectic and crazy his life was, how ungrounded he was. Now, I believe his father loved him, Al Hendrix, and Jimi loved Al. I definitely believe so. But there was a lot of family discord growing up, alcoholism, unharmonious marriage between mom and dad, very unstable childhood, living with this person, with that person, not really knowing if there's going to be food on the table at night or in the day. So you can understand why he felt like, who gives a crap? I'm just going to live for the moment. If things are looking good right now, I'm going to jump at it, because who knows what's around the bend. He didn't have a root that was that he felt much more than like an emotional sort of nostalgia for. He didn't have a root that he felt he could depend on anything for. You know, like you can go home to mom's house and she'll make you a meal, or dad will support you with some financial backing or something. He only had small tastes of that in his life. So that he was really, when he was on his own, he was on his own. He didn't know how to manage money because no one ever taught him. And he had managers who seemed to be doing great for him in that they made him a star, but then just kind of worked him to death. As long as he would work, they would, put work in front of him, and he became a hamster on a wheel. Again, he didn't know how to manage money, so even though he was making tons of money at some point, it was just all disappearing because he was riding a limousine everywhere, buying fancy stuff for people, not just himself, very generously buying for others, but not thinking about how this is all going to like be sustainable. Didn't care about that at all, or just didn't think about it, the way he was in the military for a while, so his view on the Vietnam War was, he was not anti-Vietnam. Maybe towards the end he switched, but most of it he thought that war was justified because he was in the military and he had that military mindset. Saving the world for democracy type of thinking. And just an electrifying guy. And there was a dark side. He was a pretty awesome, cool guy, but he could snap, get very angry, get violent. And when you hear the life he led, I really can't blame the guy at all. Plus, not only his own family discord that he came from, but the society at the time, the civil rights movement. There's a lot of ugliness. He lived through a lot of racism. So what do you expect, that you're not going to snap sometimes when you get build up all this negative energy inside of you? So I was very surprised with how engaged I was. I'm not a huge Jimi Hendrix fan, but as a guitar player and a guitar teacher for decades now, he was up front, in the forefront for a certain period of time when I was, let's say, late 90s, early 2000s, where I really couldn't ignore him if I took my craft seriously. And I learned, various songs from him. I used to cover some of his songs. I have one official cover of Little Wing online, one of his most beautiful songs. So I really dug into his music, and this book inspired me to listen to his whole catalog, basically. I still don't love it. I don't love it as a fan, but as an experience, the Jimi Hendrix experience, it's worth having. It's a unique voice in the history of music. I'll say music, not just rock and roll music. And also pivotal in understanding a generation to some degree of, the 1960s, the hippies, the civil rights, Black Panthers, various things that come into play in seeing the Jimi Hendrix story. You could kind of understand history deeper. Also, like Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, Brian Jones, how those other young people died at 27, right around that time. And then also, as a guitar player, you realize what kind of phenomenal impact he had on guitarists. Eric Clapton, Pete Townsend, Jeff Beck, there's plenty of other people who saw him. And then so many people that I was influenced by, Jimi was their hero. So I can't get around it. It comes back to Jimi on many levels. So for me, it was very worthwhile to read it. I highly recommend it if you care about guitar history, if you care about American history, if you care about Jimi Hendrix and his music and his life. It would be worth a read for sure. All right, that's that. Have a great day and keep on reading.